Okay, so we are here today to talk about sermons, long form content, how to use AI to repurpose it into what I think is much more engaging and interactive content. One of the things that I have in terms of sermons is I think most church websites are living in a 2010 world or 2015 world. We're 10 years behind. If we looked up any of your church websites here, you probably have a sermon archive page, and you probably tell people to go watch previous sermons. But most sermon archive pages basically have a single long form piece of content, right? Depends on who you are and maybe what denomination you are in, what the culture is. But that sermon could be 15 minutes, it could be 50 minutes long, right? And basically it's long form content. But we are living in a YouTube world. And in the YouTube world, we want short form content to be engaging, not long form content, where people watch videos and they abandon them pretty quickly. You need to get to something pretty quick, pretty quick and fast. You need an opening hook. You need something that really engages them out of the gate. And I would say most sermon archive pages, when they just copy paste the recording of the sermon that they put, from the pulpit into the website, that first couple of minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes is not super engaging, and you actually lose people. And there's other ways to do that. And podcasting is just one of the incredible ways to be personal, to be intimate, to increase the trust factor and really drive engagement. And so we talk about kind of like this pathway that you want to bring people down, short form to mid form to long form content. And this type of podcasting that we're trying to talk about today hopefully fits in that pathway, so that we introduce them to the teaching that you've already invested in, that you already have a manuscript on, you've already preached the long form content, and let's pull out some nuggets and create podcasts that are much more engaging than short form, that hook them, and that increases their the relevance and the interest, so that they actually go down the pathway of hopefully eventually consuming a long form version of that, or more importantly, digging into what else your church and your ecosystem actually has to offer in terms of programs and affinity groups. And of course, coming to church on Sundays is one of those options. So can we use podcasts to increase the reach of what your podcast is going to do in terms of discovery, getting more people to discover your church, and actually serving them where they are for the felt needs that they might have when they're online searching for things, and as well as for the people in the room, your own community attendees. How do you actually increase the effectiveness of the message that you preach for discipleship, for small group discussions, etc.? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And again, you're going to get a copy of this recording, and hopefully you'll use it as discussions for your teams. One of the things I always say is your job is not to become the utmost expert in AI, as the leader of your team or ministry or organization. Your number one job and call that I'm challenging you here today is to be the facilitator of conversations with your team and your organization about AI. Bring it up and actually, have that conversation, foster those ideas so that people can start to feel comfortable and normalize using AI in their ministry workspace. So we're going to start with 5 insights of why I think podcasts are strategic. And then we're going to go into how to actually practically create it. So, high level, let's talk about the why and why it's a good vehicle, and then go down to the ground level and roll up our sleeves and talk about some tactics. So the first insight is that sermons are passive methods of knowledge transfer typically, right? If you want to be totally reductionistic, sermons are passive audience participation. Podcasts, even though it is audio and it is one way, kind of like a sermon, they have a very different dynamic in engagement. They are personal. When people listen to a full sermon, they are hearing you in the pulpit talking to the room. But when you have a podcast, whether it be earpods or AirPods or over-the-ear headphones, you're talking with them. You're in their ears. It's a very personal experience. And that modality changes everything that happens in the same message. And so what you want to do is you actually want to figure out how to have an experience with them one-on-one, where you're talking to them intimately in their ears, as if it's a conversation in the hallway after you had your sermon, right? After the sermon, after the worship service, people are having coffee, they're having fellowship. What are those conversations, the coffee chat conversations, that actually take your core ideas, concepts, and teaching and extends it so that it just infects their brain and they marinate on the ideas. They can't get rid of it, so that when they leave the building, it stays with them throughout the week and it actually becomes something that's part of their spiritual journey. So can you use those conversations in ways that really bring it home and make it personal to them? And the more you can do this, it increases the engagement level and affinity for them and your community. One of the core concepts of content marketing that we teach, I have this thing called the law of 7-11. You see it that in consumer, in retail, in sales, there's this general concept that someone needs 7 to 11 meaningful interactions with you, your organization, your brand, before they become compelled to make actionable decisions, before they actually do something with it. And so I actually extend that even further. That says the law of 7-11, in order for someone to become a raving fan of your brand, your mission, your organization, your cause, they need to spend 7 to 11 hours with you. And what that does at the end of the day is build the trust between you and them for your messaging and everything like that. And that's when they'll get up and they'll get out of the seats and into the streets and start to actually live out their faith. And so that hourglass, what you're trying to do is get from 7 to 11 hours of engagement, is only accelerated when you're able to engage them in mediums that are super personal, in their ear, that's very intimate, versus a one-to-many modality that feels like you're an audience in a big room. And so this is why podcasts are so powerful. The second insight here that we have to talk about is that podcasts let you reframe, it lets you expand, and more importantly, it lets you humanize the sermon experience. Most of the teaching that we actually get is reminiscent of classroom teaching, right? We all grew up in schools, and then you sit in a sanctuary, and sometimes we basically go into this default mode of just information capture, that it's a lecture. But what podcasts actually do is this second chance of taking that same information, where you don't have to go through and do another 5, 10, 15 hours of work, but it lets you reframe the ideas, it lets you expand and go deeper, and more importantly, it lets you to build that relationship with them more than that 1 hour a week that you have with them at church. And there's reasons why this works, right? You're able to share these insights that you couldn't really unpack in a sermon. Sermon is like, no matter how long your sermon is on Sunday, it's never enough time to really dive deep into that the core teaching, the idea that you've actually worked on all week, right? You've spent, a dozen hours on this message, and you have to deliver it in a neat, compact format. Well, there are tons of other things that you actually can share, impart with people that really want to be discipled, that isn't available in that time constraint from the pulpit. So those insights are a place that you can actually put into the podcast. Second one is, again, in a public venue, you're not having Q&A, open Q&A like a town hall in your sermons. But this is the place where you can actually address things that are much more nuanced, that have these difficult edges that are challenging, that actually people are challenged with, but then also people want to challenge you or the actual topic with things that are very sensitive or difficult, right? This is the place that you can actually wrestle with it and have much more candid discussions in a podcast environment. And the last one I think is really important is when you're able to reframe, expand, experiment with different angles of attack to the same message, adding different voices, a second voice into a conversation format, there's something quite different than a single voice podcast versus a conversation. And we're going to talk about how to use AI to do that as well. I think a discussion-based format is a very, very powerful way to help people, equip them with processing of the learnings that you're trying to impart to them. And that allows you to, again, not just have your own voice or a staff person's voice or whoever the host is of your podcast. You don't need to be the host of that podcast, but allows them to introduce even other angles of attack, other voices, whether it be from a skeptic, whether it be someone who just gave their life to Jesus. It might be someone who doesn't go to church, right? There's all these other points of views that you can introduce into a discussion-based podcast that typically is not available from the pulpit, from your own voice, if you're going to have a secondary opportunity to present the gospel message that you do in that podcast, right? Okay. Third insight is that conversations are actually just easier to consume and grasp because that is a modality that we all are used to and utilize on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment daily basis, right? That one-to-many lecture format, that one-to-many sanctuary to a speaker format is not something that's people have normalized on a daily basis after they leave school. And so conversations are just something that's easier to hold on to nuggets from the actual thing because you have internal dialogue that extends it from the podcast conversations. And so it gets you out of the lecture mode, right? And then it's easier to remember things because these Q&As, if you have a discussion, you start to, in your internal dialogue, start to ask similar questions, or those questions are the ones that resonate with the things in your brain. And they are basically internalizing it to become a very personal engagement mechanism versus something that is just a 3-point outline, things on slides and on the screens, etc. And here's the big thing. Conversations increase relevance. And then that triggers personal interest to go even further because they want to jump into the conversation. It hopefully will spur them to have more questions. There was a pastor once where we worked with on social media, on using video reels, etc., and even email marketing. And where what happened was, especially on the emails, people started replying. And the problem that they presented is, I have too many questions for my people. They're too interested in the messages that I'm sending, and now they're actually actively engaging. They all want conversations about the Bible, and he was overwhelmed, and he was saying that that's a problem. And I don't know about you, but that's the dream, right? Isn't that the dream? Like that is like there's too many people taking the message seriously and taking it to heart, and now wrestling with it internally, and then they have their own personal questions. Now, if you think that that is a problem and that's something you want to avoid, maybe you just need to abandon this workshop today. But hopefully, I see some hearts, right? Hopefully, this is something where that's aspirational, and that would be amazing. Now, side note, I don't think you need to be the know-it-all, and hopefully you're discipling people and leaders and also having a culture where you don't need to have the answers, but you can have people partner with them and says, hey, I don't know the answer, but maybe we can go on a journey and explore that question together. Maybe we can go in and look at the Bible and look at some commentaries and find discussion groups that are actually willing to take that more seriously. So anyway, these conversations hopefully are going to do that in a way that's very meaningful for your community. So that's the third insight. Insight number 4 is that your Sunday sermon is not enough. And you know that. Everyone knows that. And the dream, I think, for most pastors, like, how do you get people to think about all the things throughout the week? Don't just check out as soon as you get out of the parking lot on Sundays, right? And so we know that real spiritual formation, discipleship, doesn't happen just on Sundays. One day a week is not enough. And I would say even podcasts are not enough. Even if you had a daily podcast, that's not enough, right? There's all these other things that your church and community need to offer as tools and options. But podcast is a great, efficient way to add just one more significant tool that could help people efficiently at scale, right? And it actually is something better than just like a midweek teaching service Wednesday nights, like many churches have, or Tuesday night Bible study group, etc. Because podcast is so flexible that people can take with them. It's a portable form factor that either it's a video podcast or an audio podcast with different preferences for different people, but they use it when they're going to the gym, when they're in a commute, when they're in the kids pickup line, picking up kids after school. There's so many different ways that podcasts are actually consumed. So it actually fits into more segments of your community during the middle of the week. You want to increase the touch points that people are actually touching the Bible, thinking about your sermon, and actually connecting with each other in community about it. And so this is shared experiences that you can actually then utilize to foster peer-to-peer conversations, as well as their own spiritual formation. So hopefully that makes sense, right? And again, this is the reason why I love podcasts over so many different forms, is that it is something that you've already invested in, and you do not need to then create a new message. This is derivative content that you can reframe, expand upon, something that you already just did, right? And so that's the magic of this podcast format, where it is not just a complete reinvention of something, it is doubling down on things that you actually have done already, and that it's in alignment strategically with the direction that you have, because preaching from the pulpit on Sundays is the most strategic thing in terms of overarching agenda, in terms of what you're doing, in terms of exploration of the Bible, right? So now that agenda has been set at the top, and now this is in full alignment, where you don't need to talk about derivative strategy and all this other stuff. It just is very efficient. So that's the fourth insight. The fifth one is that outside of helping your own attendees, your own people, your own Bible study leaders, your own team leaders, your own staff, podcast is actually a form factor that uniquely is really something that the culture has embraced. There's more podcasts than ever. Podcast consumption has actually grown, not diminished. And because now we have video podcasts as well as audio podcasts, YouTube itself has actually launched. I don't know if you have a YouTube channel, you might have noticed. YouTube has launched a podcast playlist genre category in your own account. So now you can actually have a playlist that is specifically called a podcast, and you can have a video podcast that is hosted there as well. So this is a discovery aspect. You're able to reach people outside of the typical normal channels of content delivery. So this is not SEO. It's not something you need to write more articles on your church website. It's not more things that you have to put on your social media. And because right now, people are, again, this is YouTube Nation. People are discovering new content on YouTube, on Spotify, on their podcast platform. They're looking for new serial content. And this is an artifact of all the streaming services. Netflix, Apple TV, Amazon Prime, all this kind of stuff. And you probably are going through this as well. Even though we have the proliferation of streaming channels and the catalogs, there's not enough to watch on TV, right? There's a stat, I think it's double-digit percentage of people. It's actually surprising how many people will start a session on Netflix and can never find something. They just scrolling, looking at things and browsing, and then they end up abandoning their Netflix session without watching a full episode of anything, because there isn't enough good content. And so they're going off these streaming platforms to actually then discover and try to find other content sources that they can actually consume and go into. And so YouTube is obviously something. Spotify for music that has now embraced podcasting is another channel that main mass culture is actually utilizing, but most publishers and creators have not figured out that is a great place to show up. So, again, your full sermon podcast, every church should do that because that's easy. You're already recording a sermon. You should ship that. But the full sermon, again, is not probably the thing that someone who's not church, that's not going to your church, that's spiritually curious, that's probably not what they're going to consume on a regular basis out the gate. So instead of a full sermon, what if you had a 10-minute podcast, a 15-minute podcast, things that are not just about Bible passages that's titled, like most sermons are, but rather felt need driven titles that have hooks that bring people in, like I give an example here. Is God silent or am I just distracted? Right? There are these felt need topics that you can go to. If you look at the Harvard study on human flourishing, the 5 dimensions of human flourishing. What if you can recast the title and the hook and the intro of the podcast to start with some premises and some questions that are felt need based, and then ease into the actual core teachings of your sermon, and then leave them that says, hey, if you thought this was interesting, if you thought this was helpful, we have more. We have a full sermon that dives into this. We have all these other resources that are available, right? So you're trying to get them on this journey from short form, mid form to long form content. And that, again, is how you build trust. You get them interested in the small things, and you say, hey, if you're interested in this more, I have more depth to what you're interested in, and offering that gives the curated experience. And that is why they're going to look to you, because you have authority and you have this trusting experience that you're helping them with their own journey. The what's in it for me from their perspective is what they're interested in. And if you're able to support them and be the guide and continuously give them different angles of attack to those questions in their minds, then that's how you build the trust. And so this is where reaching new people is a huge benefit and upside to using podcasts. And podcasts are an artifact that you can actually recommend to friends, share a podcast episode with friends, right? And so you need to think of this network effect that we live in right now, that sharing content is compelling. And so if you look at each of these podcast episodes as completely separate constellations in your ecosystem that point back to your long form, that cross promote other things, you are taking advantage of what we are living in now, is a decentralized, completely distributed ecosystem for content. And this is a very different paradigm of how you're thinking about ministry resources, right? The old school is ABC ministry, right? Is it, right? It's attractional. It's all about the building. And then we just want your cashola, right? Like that's the stigma of the church, right? And pastors, all we care about typically are the 3 B's, right? It's baptisms, bucks in your wallet, and how great our building is. And this is completely flipping on the model. We're serving the people first before they're even part of the community, before they're even understanding what the Bible is about. We're trying to hook them with relevance, to give them perspectives of things that are biblically infused worldviews that are attacking the felt needs that they actually have. So this is that bridge and transition, so that you actually provide that relevance first. Then you actually demonstrate your authority with biblical worldviews that are logical and persuasive. And then you do that in a stream that builds the trust over time, so that you earn the right to have those conversations, then bring them into the church and your programs and your community. So hopefully that makes sense. And that is not too foreign, and that's intuitive to everybody as you follow along. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat. Okay. So let's get down to how are you launching podcasts. There's 2 ways to do that, right? So one is manually. So you can actually go off and do this manually. And I totally encourage you to do that. If this AI stuff is intimidating, start with a manual. And I would say you don't need to commit to a lifelong podcast that's serial and forever, that's never ending. Start with a series. Start with short form. If you look at how our culture actually produces and publishes content, consumers are used to this. The people that you're trying to reach are used to short form serial content. So think of a season of a show, right? We no longer are like tied to must-see TV on Thursday night and we have to watch Friends for 22 episodes in a season, then take a break and then over the summer, and then they start the season again in the fall, right? That paradigm is gone. What they do is we now launch seasons of shows on Amazon Prime, on Disney Plus, right? All these networks, they just drop seasons where you can binge watch things at a time. And that's how the culture is set. So think about it that way, where it's low commitment. So just test it out. Can you commit to 3, 5, 7, or 10 episodes, and that's it, in and out, and just use it as an experiment? I would say, can you take one sermon series that you've preached, that's either three sermons or 4 sermons or 5 sermons, something that's short, and just create a podcast around that, and that's it, and do it manually first so that you get the mechanics down, so that you understand it. That would be the first thing that I would suggest if AI is actually a little bit intimidating for you. So how do you do that? Let's create a short form podcast, a 10-minute podcast. I would love a 3-minute podcast, but I think that's impossible for most of us that are in the preaching, teaching section, right? Short is not simple. And so a 10-minute podcast, a 15-minute podcast, I would not want it to go more than 20 minutes because, again, the people that we're trying to reach that are spiritually curious, that they're not attending your church or that might be casually attending your church a couple times, those are not the people that want to just sit down and study something, right? So you want to introduce something that's short, tease them. The job is not to be comprehensive. The job of these podcasts is to be compelling. Let me say that one more time. Your job is not to teach comprehensively in this type of podcast. Your job is to put the gospel and biblical worldviews on display so that they're compelling. So then someone leans forward and wants more, right? So it's almost like a tease. You want to give them a taste. It's kind of like a Costco sample, but a little bit more filling than that, right? And so you want to be able to give them a hook that says, this is compelling. I'm willing to listen to more. So 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, that's the ideal time, which means you're not going to explore every single thing that you went into your podcast, into your sermon. You want to focus on 1, 2, or 3 ideas. Second, if you're doing manually, you don't need to go out and buy stuff. I think one of the biggest excuses, and I have 2 clients right now. One of them, actually, I was just mentoring somebody, and they wanted to start a podcast, and they are putting it off now until the fall. Why? Because they don't know which podcast microphone to buy. They're thinking of getting an audio mixer. They want to get all this fancy gear down. They don't know if they want to do a video version also. And then that triggered like, oh, I don't know if my webcam is good enough. You have an AI 4K webcam, Kenny. Maybe I need to get one of the, like, paralysis by analysis. Start simple, right? One of the general rules you'll see when you talk to podcasters and YouTubers and creators is they say is if your first episode that you published back way then, you're not embarrassed by, and you don't laugh at yourself by your first episode that you ever published, then you're doing it wrong. You waited too long, right? So get out of the gate. You want to put in the reps and just be okay with the first couple episodes. It's going to be your starter pack, right? And so the easiest way is get Zoom. Zoom, even if you don't have a paid account, they allow 40 minutes for free, right? So start a 10-minute podcast. It's very easy. Do a Zoom room with yourself only, hit record, and then just download that recording. You can use tools like Riverside.fm is a great podcast-specific recording tool, or just use your iPhone. There's actually, even till today, I have an audio app on my phone that's just an audio recorder. And sometimes when I'm at a conference or at a lunch or something like that, I will actually go out and just use my iPhone because we don't have a studio. We don't have microphones. We don't have anything. And we will then just record with a recording app. I have an app called Voice Recorder. It's a simple app, and basically it just records the audio. Stop, start, you can name it, and then you can download it as MP3 or email it. That's all you need to get started. And then if you really wanted to edit it, you can use free programs like Audacity. There's paid programs like Descript. There's many programs that you can use to edit the audio and then export it. And then you use a platform like the one that we recommend, we'll talk about today, is called Spotify for podcasters. Spotify is known as a music platform. Everyone probably has heard of Spotify or use it. But Spotify bought a podcasting platform called Anchor several years ago. And Anchor was a great, easy podcasting platform. They've integrated it. They've renamed it Spotify for podcasters, or actually creators. And the best part about it is completely free. You don't need a credit card. There's no upsells. And it integrates with Spotify so that it automatically publish it to the network. And now it's live everywhere. And then you just need to simply, with that first season, wherever it's 3 episodes, 5 episodes, 7 episodes, then you just include it in different places. Email it out with a newsletter. Put a PS in your email signature. You're one of the most wasted real estate in our digital ecosystems is your email signature. Putting a PS to promote whatever you're doing right now, whether it's VBS or the Next Men's Breakfast or a devotional email list or your podcast, a PS in your email signature is a great way to promote things. You can text it to people, put your episodes on social media, mention it on Sunday, put up a QR code on the screen. There's so many different ways to start sharing it and getting it out into the wild. But this is the easiest way. That's manual. Let's talk about AI. This is what we're here for today. And so this is what I think is a very, very easy and practical workflow. And that is using AI tools to actually produce the audio where you don't need to buy a microphone. You don't need to actually show up and record episodes every single week. You can actually use AI voice cloning, or you can use these AI tools that have other people's voices to produce an audio podcast. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But the first step you need to do is create a conversational script, the actual transcript that's going to be read, which if you did it manually, you can create the transcript and read it manually to the microphone, to the screen on Zoom or whatever. But what we're going to do is you can use a chatbot to create a transcript and then actually record that with an AI cloned voice. That is the easiest way to do it. And then once you get the rhythm down, the SOP as we call it, the standard operating procedure, this is something you can train staff members or even volunteers to do. And activating volunteers is an amazing thing because this will activate volunteers that you probably haven't activated previously before. It's able to be done remotely. It's able to be done on their time. And then it puts people's time into a place where they feel like they're contributing to something in a meaningful way. And it is a stepping stone to basically reel in a volunteer into bigger roles in your ministry. It's a perfect way to get people involved in your ministry. So what we do typically is we get a transcript of your video. The first premise is that you record your sermon somehow. And then we take that and we got to get the transcript out of it. And so there are many tools to do that. And then what we do is we upload that into Claude. ChatGPT works well, but Claude is very good for long form content right now. For conversational long form content, it tends to be a little bit better on that. And we will ask Claude to create a 10, 12-minute script. And then you can even, have the conversation to massage it even further. You can create a conversation. You can create an interview. You can create a one-person script. Doesn't matter. You can actually change the tone of it. You can add your own stories, right? There's all these things that you need to be doing in the session with the chatbot to create that script. Next, you're going to go into a tool like 11 Labs. 11 Labs is the premier tool right now, and it's very cheap. It's $5 a month for the basic level. I think if you go to this QR code, I think you set up, I think even the trial right now is like $1 instead of $5. And so you could use 11 Labs to clone your own voice, or there's a whole library of other professional voices that you can use. And to clone your own voice, you only need to do 2 minutes of audio. Actually, you only need 10 seconds of your own voice to clone, but to get something that's good fidelity, If you record just 2 minutes of your own voice, just reading text, then it actually does a great job. If you actually record, I think it's 25 minutes of audio, reading text, it actually does an amazing things. Oh, you don't see my slides? I think if you're still sending slides, you're not seeing it. Yes, I'm sharing the slides with the QR code 11. Step 2. Is everyone seeing that? Let's just, Eric. I'm showing step 2, create your AI clone's voice. Yes, okay. In a second, I'm going to go off into the actual tools and show you. I just want to walk through the workflow first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that script that we did, put it into the tool, indicate that you're going to use which voice, your AI clone's voice or another one, and then it generates the audio. You can download it. And then step 3 is you actually take it, you go into Spotify Creators, you're going to upload the file there, and then it syndicates it out. We'll show you also that Spotify has an easy way and process to distribute it, not just through there, but through Apple Podcasts and Google, through Buzzcast, all these other places that people use to download their podcast. And the other tool that we will actually go through is Google Notebook LM. It's a fantastic tool where you don't need to clone your voice. It will create 2-person podcasts on the fly in a way that's incredible. And so this is something that I think every single church can take advantage of. And then what we'll do is I'm going to share with you an actual prompt framework of taking your transcript and then creating the actual podcast. So bottom line, I don't want you to overcomplicate things. This is the one thing people get stuck in sometimes when we go through workshops and things like that. What I want you to do is succeed. I want you to actually create a podcast episode and post it to our Facebook group as an example. I'd love for every single one of you guys to do this. All you have to do is first pick a sermon series and transcribe one of the sermons or the whole thing, right? The second one is then upload that transcript and generate your episode, right? And then you want to create your podcast title, your description blurb, your marketing blurb, and then go into Canva and just create some cover art, and so that you can actually upload it to Spotify for Creators, right? That's the platform that hosts your audio files and distributes it. And then you actually upload the MP3 that you created, and then you're done. And then you just rinse and repeat. This is a very simple process that we're going to go through. And so let's change directions, share my web page, and then what I'll do is I'm going to show you just some examples and how to do things. So if you remember, step 1 is what? We got to take one of your sermons, and then we got to get the transcript. We got to get the actual text that we can work with to create derivative content. And so all I did is I went to Redeemer Presbyterian Church's YouTube channel. Tim Keller is someone that I respect and admire. I've worked in his church. And so I just I went to the YouTube channel and I found one of the sermons on spiritual friendship. And so I just went to his place. Let's get rid of the ad. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the transcript out of the sermon. So I would go to your own church's website or get the file or your YouTube channel, and I would get your own video. And this is an easy way to create the transcript. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 different ways to be able to get the transcript. The first one is a Chrome plugin called Glasp. And what this thing, here it is, it's called the YouTube Summary with ChatGPT by Glasp. If you go to this URL, you can actually download and install the Chrome plugin. I put it into the chat. It's completely free. They have a paid version, but I'm using the free version. They have one for Safari. They have one for Edge, and Firefox, and Chrome, etc. But it's a plugin or extension. And so what happens is, and this is fantastic, on any given YouTube, this little bar shows up, the transcript and summary. And there's a couple different options here. But the first one is if you hit the down arrow, it opens up 2 little tabs. One is the transcript, the other is the summary. If you have the pro version, it will actually summarize the video immediately for you here. Otherwise, it has this transcript. And so all you need to do is then go down and just, I'm going to hit shift click at the bottom of this thing. Whoops. Right? Highlight the whole transcript, copy it, and then you can paste it out into Google Docs or anything that you want, right? So that's the first thing. I will say, let me just show off some of the reasons why I love this, because you can now use this for any other YouTube video out there, is that there's a couple different options here. Oh, sorry, there's a copy transcript button. I've been doing it manually. You can copy it from plain text right here. The second one is to summarize the video. So it's kind of like a ChatGPT logo here, the OpenAI logo. But basically, when you click on this, it opens up all these different models that you can use in ChatGPT, or you can use Claude, or you can use Gemini, you can use Google AI Studio. And so if I wanted to open this up in GPT 4.0 in Claude, I click this, and all it does is it opens up a new window, opens up my ChatGPT account, copy paste the entire transcript in there with a basic prompt at the very beginning if you actually read it. And it says, summarize the following in an outline format. Use subheads, bullet point lists, key takeaway statements, core idea, but do not use quotation marks, and open it in Canvas for editing. And for anyone that doesn't know what Canvas is kind of like this Google Docs editing window that you can open up. And now I just have this summary of the actual video. This is great for any YouTube video, not just sermon videos. So you could actually then work on this on the left-hand side by chatting with it. Is like, say, can you revise this to make it shorter and for a youth audience in middle school, right? And then it will just revise it in the main canvas and go to work and do the work. So this is a workflow that you can actually work on using that Glass plugin. What we're going to do, and again, if you wanted to do it in Claude, it will launch Claude and do the same thing. If you want to launch Gemini, the same thing. All these different things you can do. This is why I love this plugin. But you can copy the transcript and get it out here. The next way is to use a tool called Riverside. Riverside.fm is, again, a podcasting platform that you could use. Thanks, Jay. And basically, they offer this tool completely for free outside of their main platform. They try to upsell you and they try to tell you about the main platform. If you are actually investing in platform, this is a great content to be able to produce webinars and podcasts and video editing and all these things. But if you go to /transcription, then you can actually transcribe a long form video in over 100 different languages if you wanted to, with AI for free. There's no credit card required, no account required. All you have to do is just upload your file right here, upload the file, and then you could get the transcription immediately here, your long form content completely done free. So I love this tool to recommend because, again, no trial, no credit card, no account required. It's a completely public, free utility that Riverside is using. Now, they want you to look at their video editing and their podcast platform. It's a great platform, but you don't need to use that at all, no pressure. So that's the second way to get the transcript. The third way is to use a tool like Notebook LM. So Google, and we're going to use this for something else, Google has this tool called Notebook LM, and because it's a Google server, it's completely free. You can go to this URL, notebooklm.google.com, and you basically set it up there. And I'm going to create a new notebook. It's meant to be kind of like academic. And because it's Google, it actually can hook up to your Google Drive, Google Slides, Google Docs, or YouTube, right? Because Google owns YouTube. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Tim Keller video. I'm going to copy the URL of the YouTube video. And then I'm going to go back to Notebook LM. And then down here, you can see, you can click on YouTube. Now, you can copy paste the actual transcript that we had. You can upload an MP3 file. You can upload a PDF. There's all these things you can do. But I'm going to click on YouTube here. It's going to ask me to paste in the YouTube URL. I'm going to paste in that Tim Keller Spiritual Friends URL. I'm going to click Insert. And then it does its thing. It goes off and then starts to transcribe it. And then now you can do all these other things with it. Okay. And so here's the transcription that you can do, copy paste and get out of it. So this is a third way to do that. Once you have the transcript, that's when we can actually do a lot of the work, right? And so let me share with you the prompt. Let me go back to here. And you'll get a copy of this prompt if you want to. And I also created a custom GPT for everybody to use too. But basically, it is using some of the basic core elements of the faster prompt framework that I recommend for everybody. And here it says, hey, act like a pastoral content strategist and a Christian podcast scriptwriter, specializing in taking a manuscript and creating an engaging podcast, right? Your objective is a sermon manuscript, 8 to 12 minutes. And then I have all these things. First, you're going to choose one format. It's a single person episode or two-person conversation. So it has some details about that. And then there's all these task details. In the faster framework, the T stands for task. So don't rehash the entire sermon. Just pick out 2 to 3 key ideas that would be compelling or relevant to someone that's spiritually open, even if they're not fully committed to coming to church or they're not a church member. Present these ideas in a casual storytelling way. Use metaphors, use examples in everyday life, right? So there's these instructions that I've written out. Now you can use this as is, or you could feel free to modify it, experiment, make it your own. Avoid a formal preaching tone. It should sound like a pastor talking to a friend over coffee. Reflective, vulnerable at times, personal. If you're going to talk about theological terms, make sure it's in simple terms. Avoid jargon. You want things clear and simple, right? And then you want a warm and friendly call to action. Invite listeners to share it with a friend or encourage them to visit on Sunday or suggest a question or idea to reflect, right? These are suggestions that I would actually give my intern, right? If I'm tasking the intern to take the manuscript and create a script for a podcast that we would write in front of mics. So this is something that you could do. And what I've done is I've created a custom GPT. So custom GPT is, let's see if I can find it. Where's my custom GPTs? To create it, I lost my custom GPT. Why isn't that here? My GPTs. Here, sermon podcast script. And I'll share this link with everybody later. Here, I'll copy the link right now. Oh, there it is. And if you wanted to experiment with it, there it is in the chat. But basically, there's a big fat button, create a podcast script. And I've put those instructions into this thing. And it first asks the name of the pastor. So one is Tim Keller. Name of the church, Redeemer. Do you want this to be a one-person script or two-person script? One person. 4 is, what's the ideal length? Let's just say it's a 7-minute podcast. And then, can you share the transcript? So this is where then what you would do is you would go back to GLASP, right? Copy the transcript. And then go back to the custom ChatGPT, and then I would just copy paste, the transcript, right? And then you click go, and then it's going to do its thing, right? 1, 2, 3, here it is. Here's the opening hook. Here's the intro. And this is something that you can actually read out and create a short podcast episode. You can make this a 20-minute episode. You can do, right? Even has a closing prayer at the end. So this is the script that you could then modify. You can say, I don't like this part. I like this part, right? So here, I'm Pastor Tim Keller. You can say, I'm not Tim Keller. He actually passed away. This is a sermon we listened to recently and are now discussing on the podcast, right? And so then rewrite it. So you can work with it as if it's your intern to basically talk about it. So here's the hook. Have you ever felt the ache of loneliness, even in a crowded room or a busy life? That Tim Keller's sermon recently on spiritual friendship reminded me that this ache isn't something to dismiss. It's actually a sign that we're made for something deeper. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad you're here this week. We're reflecting on a sermon we listened to from the late Tim Keller. It's entitled Spiritual Friendship. It's rooted in Acts 20. It's a travelogue of Paul's journey, right? But beneath this itinerary is this moving picture of gospel-centered friendship. And today, I just want to talk about why this message still hits home, right? So this script is decent. Now, you can massage it and make it your own. I would love your thoughts. What does this script feel like to you? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being good, it's good enough to ship. 1, it's horrible. We need to go back to we need to fire our intern and try something else. From a 1 to 10, how would you rate this script, right? So it asks some questions. There's some transitions. It's going to different points in it. It sounds, I think, conversational enough that you can actually record this. So once you do that, then you can go into tools like 11 Labs. So 11 Labs is a great tool that allows you to have even 2-person podcasts now. You can add multiple voices and has realistic voices that are that you can choose from. So I'm just this is on their homepage. And just to let you hear, let me just make sure that the audio is shared. Yeah, the sound is shared. Hopefully you'll hear and understand the level of advanced AI cloning right now is incredible, right?
Kenny, have you tried the new 11 Labs V3?
Yeah, just got it. The emotion is so amazing. I can actually do whispers now, like this.
Ooh, fancy. Check this out. I can do full Shakespeare now. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Nice. Though I'm more excited about the laugh upgrade. Listen to this.
That's so much better than our old ha 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 robot chuckle.
Right? So 11 Labs has come a long way, and this is probably the best tool out there to clone your own voice and do things. And so all I did is I put in a script, and then I asked it with AI. So AI will read your script and then actually go through and add those emotional cues, etc. And it actually then, you can actually modify it as is. And it can generate different types of speech for you, right?
Hey, can I ask you something real? When life gets hard, who do you call? Who stands with you, not just to solve your problems, but to sit with you in them? If a few names came to mind right away, that's a gift.
Okay, so this allows you to now take your transcript and put it in there and then clone your voice, etc. So in order to clone your voice, let me go back to voices. There's all these voices you can choose. You can literally choose from hundreds of voices to use to narrate your audio, which is incredible. And you can change the variability, the speed, and all that kind of stuff. One of the great things about it is add a voice. And there's a couple things you can do. One is voice design. You could just type and describe the voice that you want. I want a deep sounding narrative voice that's kind of like 20th Century Fox, movie trailer voices. Like, it will design voices just by describing it. Second one is instant voice cloning. They only need 10 seconds of your audio, of your voice, in order to do a voice clone, which is incredible. But if you just give them 2 minutes of audio, it does a decent job. So you can create 30-second clips and just keep on recording 30-second clips of you reading different things with different emotion, different speed, right? And then it will actually clone your voice. The last one is what they call professional voice clone. And if you actually do 30 minutes in one sitting to read something, it does fantastic jobs. Like, you really can't tell my voice now versus if I actually had a voice clone and you were just listening to this on a phone, you would not be able to tell. And there, you just need 5 minutes. If you do 5 minutes of audio at a minimum, they have this advanced cloning that happens. So even when you do 2 minutes, this is what it looks like. You can actually upload something that you've recorded already. So you might just take an audio recording of you giving a sermon, the audio file, or giving a workshop or teaching something, or a conversation, or you can click audio and then it asks you to pick a microphone, and then you can just start. And then again, a minimum is 10 seconds required. There's 30 seconds on the clock. You will record a 30-second clip. If you wanted to go and hit record again, you can record another 30-second clip, and you can just keep on going. And once you're done, it creates the voice for you. And so this is where, let me go into our voices. I should be able to find my own voice.
Well begun is half.
Right? And so this is my own voice. And let me just share with you, what I did is I took a script that ChatGPT created, and I created a 2-person script. And then the second voice, I just selected someone called Jessica. I used the 2 voices. And again, each one you can see, you can change the volume, the speed, the stability, style exaggeration. You can change all these things. And basically, this created a 2-person conversation, and you can see how decent this thing is. If you close your eyes and just listen to this, I think it's a decent start for a conversation.
Churches embracing artificial intelligence? Well, a shocking new survey shows 87% of religious leaders are actually open to it, completely turning traditional assumptions about technology and faith on their head.
That's fascinating. What exactly are they using AI for in ministry work?
Well, the most common uses are surprisingly practical. About a quarter use ChatGPT, while others rely on Grammarly and Canva's AI features for things like research and content creation. And get this, over 60% of pastors are already using AI to help prepare their sermons.
If we're talking about pastors, I imagine there must be some concerns about maintaining the human element of ministry.
Of course, that's their biggest worry. But rather than letting fear stop them, some churches are taking a thoughtful approach. Around 41% say their main focus.
Right? So you can see, and you can tweak this, you can put the emotions in it, you can speed it up. You can change the variability of the voice, etc. But this allows you now to actually create something that you don't need to sit there and record, and you can actually outsource this to somebody, right? And so that process to me is just incredible, that you can now start to create these podcast discussions, and it doesn't even need to be your voice. If you're concerned about the AI cloning, and I was like, that's not you, right? You could use Jessica, and you can find somebody else, right? There's all these other voices that you can choose. Again, there's hundreds and hundreds of voices that you can choose from in order to create the 2-person podcast for yourself. So that is a great one. Okay. We're going to switch gears now. Let's go back to, where is it? To Renaissance Church. Renaissance Church is my church. I recorded the audio of a podcast, and here's a different style of podcast. I go to a Wednesday night Bible study. I'm an old fogey. I forget what was preached sometimes by Wednesday, and so I needed to remind myself, walking into the small group, to make all the concepts clear again, so I can be a good contributing member, right? To actually be of value to be in the group, not a bump on the log. So I actually created a 2-person podcast that reminds me of the things that explicitly try to make me look valuable at the small group. That was the prompt. I actually had a prompt that says, I forget everything by Wednesday. I need to just go over something quickly. I don't need to be comprehensive. I need to predict some of the things that might come up in the small group discussion, etc. So it created a 9-minute podcast for me, which then I could listen into the car driving to the small group, right? And so let me just speed this up a little bit, so just for your sake. So this is sped up just a little bit. But listen to this podcast that I generated just by uploading the MP3 of the sermon and some pasted text that says Christian Andrews preached this and is last week at Renaissance, right? So here it goes.
So you're walking into small group tonight, right? And the topic is Pastor Christian's sermon from last week at Renaissance Church.
That's right, the one kicking off the new series.
Exactly. And you want to be, that person who brings a bit more to the table than just nodding along.
You want some real insights.
Yeah, insights that are, well, let's just say it, radically helpful. That's what we're going to dig into right now.
We've looked closely at Pastor Christian's message. It's the first in his 6-week series, probably called something like Follow Me, right? Focusing on Jesus' invitation.
Uh-huh.
And he really started at the beginning.
Okay, so it's a 2-person podcast. They interrupt and talk over each other. They laugh, make jokes. They actually will do whatever you want to do. And so this is, I think, one of the best things that you can do. So let's go back to Tim Keller's sermon. We actually put the YouTube link in here. You can do all these other things, like you can create an FAQ, a study guide. There's all these things you can do. But over here is this deep dive conversation. And you can click generate, and it will automatically do whatever you want. Or you can click customize, right? And then you can just prompt it on very specific things. Talk specifically only about. He always does 3-point sermons. I didn't listen to the sermon. Second point in his sermon. I'm interested in it from the fact that ministry. I'm a small group leader, and we'll discuss this with our group members. What questions might come up? How would Tim Keller address them? Make this a short episode. Right? So something like that, and then there's the length. I'm going to hit shorter. You click generate, and then within a minute or two, it actually generates it. Now you can stop it, and then you can actually play it, and you can redo it. You create longer and shorter podcast episodes. But we don't need to actually do the prompting. We can actually just hit generate, and we'll just automatically do something. This is a great exercise, again, for your small group leaders. Imagine if you created a private podcast that every week on Sunday night or Monday, you just email it or send it or text the audio file to your small group leaders that listen to it before their group. How much more equipping can you give them if you want to even guide them on certain things? You might even ask, hey, here's 4 questions we're going to ask in the study guide. Can you help them discuss it around that, right? And so there's all these things that you can do. Or you can prompt it to say, hey, I want to create a podcast that's going to be launched publicly. It is aimed at this target persona. We live in this town, blah, blah, blah. You can do all these things. So this actually is, I think, a great tool that creates 2-person podcasts that you can then download and then upload to Spotify, etc. Okay, I'm going to pause there just for 1 second because the last act of this is just how do we set up Spotify for creators? What questions do you have in terms of creating the podcast, creating the things? Are there any specific questions that we can help you with here? No, I didn't know they were going to kill it. Yeah, Jay.
Yeah, Penny. Couple things. First, I ran the custom GPT, and I got a really good script back. But I think in your example, it showed like this is a hook, this is things like that. Am I mistaken that's how yours output?
Yeah,
actually, mine was just text.
Yeah, so the original version had all that stuff, and I actually just before this workshop updated it to remove the producer's notes. Now,
got it.
You can ask it to add producer's notes and notations, but when I'm copy pasting and putting into 11 Labs, for example,
got it.
You don't want it to read out, dramatic opening hook, transition here. Like it actually starts to record, or you have to manually get it out. So I actually changed the custom GPT. Now you can change it. You can actually have that conversation, but that is actually the reason why that's not in there right now.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, great. And then the other quick question I had was on that. You're in currently in Notebook LM.
Yes. Yeah.
And is was that the part that was actually doing the audio, or was that in 11 Labs?
The audio. So like, right, do you still see my screen shared? Everyone see?
I do.
You, me, and Jay. So it just completed that podcast. It created a 4-minute, 55-second podcast right here. And then if I hit play, this is what it came out with. This is live. This is dangerous. We're live right now on the internet. Here we go.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different, actually. We're tailoring this deep dive specifically for you, especially if you're a small group leader. We're zooming in on just...
Okay. It's incredible. There are so many things that this tool, we're going to do another workshop on this tool because this tool does so many other things. You can actually chat with the thing. What are the 3 points? This is a chatbot now. So you can take transcriptions and actually build things. You can actually build a Bible study guide right here if you really wanted to. When you play this, there's this interactive mode. So it's like a radio show. So watch this.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a bit different, actually. We're tailoring this deep dive specifically for you.
Right? Watch this. Click join.
Our listeners got something to share. Let's hear it.
Hey, I know that Tim was talking about this second point. I don't remember exactly what it was. Can you just quickly review that? And I'd love it for, like, can you do it where it rhymes?
We love a good rhyme request. That's a fun challenge.
Okay, let's unpack this. You want to know more about Keller's second point?
And in rhyme, no less.
So the second principle, the one we're diving into today.
It's that friendships true in Christ's own view are not just made, but discovered anew.
Yes, precisely. There are...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. Now, I'm wondering if you could do it in haiku format.
A haiku, you say? We can absolutely do that.
We love a good creative challenge on the deep dive.
Okay.
Yep. Go on.
Yeah, so what is the final takeaway? Like, I just want to know, what is the bottom line of this?
That's a great question, actually.
You're asking for the bottom line, the core message, right?
And we can absolutely give you that.
It's all about how these friendships are discovered.
Not something we manufacture ourselves.
It's a bond that's already there because of shared faith.
Like the rhyme said. Friendships true in Christ.
Okay. So do you see, Jay, like how this thing is so flexible and extensible? There's so many other things. Again, if you go to the FAQ, like it creates this, outline. And what I love is a glossary of terms, right? And so if you have spiritually curious people that have not read the Bible, and I don't care how seeker friendly you are, we all fall into the trap of including jargon, insider language in our sermons, right? No matter how hard we try, we just end up. And so why not give them a glossary of things that are said? What is this iron sharpen iron thing that he keeps on talking about? Oh, you should explain it. Like, imagine if this is part of the stuff that you're giving to your Bible study group members or leaders, or things like that, where, I don't know, I'm in a group right now. I have some ex-Catholic people. They've never read our Bible, and they've never been really given permission to think about things and ask questions. They really ask, you can ask Jesus that? Like, when you pray, you can actually ask Jesus? That came up last week. And so these are the types of things that Google Notebook and all these tools are allowing us to do. This podcast form is going to allow you to address those things that the sermon podcast cannot. Right? And so anyway, hopefully that answers your question, Jay.
It's incredible. Thanks.
Tons of stuff this can do. Michael says the voices sound pretty natural. Do they have a variety of cultural voices that appeal? So Google Notebook does not. It's just those 2 voices. They have been continuously improving the tool, like that listener call-in is a new feature. There's all these things that are not announced that you just keep on doing. My suspicion is you're going to be able to do that eventually. Eric is saying, quality-wise, do you find the custom voices or 11 Labs voices to be better? I think on the custom voices, they do an incredible job. It depends on how much time you invest in it. If you can actually commit to doing the half-hour recording, I don't think your wife, your spouse, your mom's not going to know that it's you versus an AI recording if you invest in 30 minutes of training the thing. Even 5 minutes does an incredible job. And then it comes down to personal preferences. If you want to use your own AI clone or not, what is the value of that? But they have hundreds and hundreds of voices. The other thing that I suggested somebody else is you don't need to clone your own voice. You can clone someone else's voice in your church. that's not necessarily visible from the stage. It just is a natural voice, right? Tia saying is if we record on Facebook Live, how can we get the transcript? So I would download the video, and then I would use tools like YouTube, where you can upload the video to YouTube and get the transcription automatically, or Riverside. And there's other paid tools that you can actually get the transcription as well. So hopefully, that gives you a good start. Okay, let me go to Spotify. So Spotify is the place. Now, there's tons of other ways to get a podcast up and running. To me, this is the easiest way. It's also free. It's budget friendly. Every executive pastor and finance director at a church will agree that this is a great way because it's free. They love the word free. And so if you go to creators.spotify.com, that's the new home for their podcasting. And you set up an account. So you set up an account and you can set up a new show. And basically, if you have a podcast already, you can import it and you can add to it or create a new show. I would create a new show, and then it just goes into a new page that starts to, ask for the basic information of a new show. Let me share what it looks like. So show settings. So here's one that I just created quickly. Show them. I called it AIAIO. And then there's a description, creator name, and then cover art. I just went into Canva, searched for templates for podcast cover art, and then just uploaded my photo and modified the text. This I created literally in about 3.5 minutes. You can go to town, do your own custom art, but I would just start with something in Canva. Canva's free. If you're a nonprofit 501c3, they have premium accounts for free. But anyway, that's easy to do. And then you choose what category. I chose Christianity. What language, clean or explicit. Maybe you have an explicit podcast sermon show. I don't. So you can signal that it's clean. That's for filters. And then there's all these things, that you can do. What's your website, your social connections, and that's it. And so once you start that and save it, it creates a podcast page. So I put in all my platforms, my description. This is our Church Tech Today podcast. Every one of you should subscribe right now, like it, hit that like button. And so it creates this page for you. And then each individual episode, as you publish them, gets their own page on. This is on Spotify. This is literally on Spotify. But then when you go back here on the show settings, there's availability. So if you click on availability, it then at the very bottom allows you to then set up connection distribution to all these other podcast platforms. Amazon Music, you click open, and then you can submit using their portal. There's a click out to their portal that you can then set up the account there and list it on Amazon Music. Apple Podcasts, Castbox, Good Pods, iHeartRadio, Overcast. But these are the major podcast platforms that you wanted to use and distribute. And then from there, once you set up these connections, every time you upload here, it automatically publishes to all the other places. And so you don't need to worry about it. And again, this is completely free. No credit card required. And then here's the other thing, because it's Spotify and they're a little bit future forward, they are now doing video podcasts. And so now instead of an MP3 audio file, if you actually did the Zoom recording thing, you can upload a video of yourself and it will automatically create a video version of the podcast for you. And so this is what I love about Spotify. There's so many things that you can do. So hopefully this is helpful for you. It's completely free. You can actually then go off and create derivative podcasts. You can do multiple podcasts. You can create podcasts that are, you can do different series for, every message series that you have if you really wanted to. You can do it on ministry fronts, a podcast for your kids ministry, a podcast for your women's ministry, podcast for your men's ministry, right? There's all these things that you can do here. This is just, I think, an amazing way to actually get engagements and reach for populations that you typically would not be able to serve and reach, but now they are actually doing that. Let's see. Randy says, how do you run the custom podcast script GPT to run it on my ChatGPT? So if you have that link that I shared earlier, and it's right above, I'll share it again. You should be able to click through and should open to it. If you have the plus version, so you have to be on the paid version of ChatGPT, and then you have access to these custom GPTs. You can create your own custom GPT. We have a workshop, I think it's going to be in September, on how to create a custom GPT. But you can create a custom GPT, and it should basically give you access to this, and then you can save it to your sidebar. That's why it wasn't shown on mine before. But you can pin it to your sidebar and kind of like a bookmark and access it in the future. We will put this link into our AI for Church Leaders recording archive of this. Jay says, is it AI generated? Which one? What are you talking about? Is what AI generated, Jay? Let me know what your question is. Terry is saying Sonics is $5 per hour. Is that a transcription service? Sonics, Terry? Yeah, my AI podcast. No, that AI AIO is new. The main Church Tech Today podcast is not AI generated. Our team is actually generating Google Notebook generated podcasts. So we are going to actually launch a series, I think next month, either next month or August. We're going to do something in that manner. Okay, so that was a whirlwind for everybody. Hopefully that is helpful for you. Let me know what questions you have. This hopefully is going to give you the tools that you need to get started. And remember, I don't want you to overcomplicate things. Let's just start with one sermon or one sermon series. Transcribe one sermon with using Riverside, YouTube, with the GLASP, or if you work on your manuscript, you can use your manuscript. Upload it to a chatbot and generate your first episode. And then last one is you create a podcast account on Spotify, and then you upload your MP3, and then you're done. So hopefully this has given you a pathway and some inspiration to use the podcasting format for something different. And yes, the slides will be available. We're going to upload this in the next 24 hours in the same place that you